Good evening, everyone. This is Rodney. I'll start over. Hope everybody had a really good holiday and a really happy holidays, and I hope you were able to enjoy your family. Certainly, we want to keep Tim and uh, Jackie in our prayers, and their son Ryan as he continues to recuperate from the surgery that he had. He's better today, so let's just keep him in our prayers. Uh, and I just want to say a good evening to everyone. Uh, to all of you, I see Vicky. I see Jill. I see Bill. I know that Joyce and John are going to join us downstairs if they haven't already. And just, I don't think they have because they're not on the screen yet. Uh, but they're going to be joining us, and then some may be joining us through Facebook Live too. So we're going to go ahead and get started because we didn't have time to cover everything the last time we met, and I want to cover a couple of things before. The first thing I wanted to go over, and that's why I'm sharing this screen with you now, is the Abrahamic covenant. I want to do like an overview of that to start with, because we're going to be talking about that a little bit tonight. It says God burst into the lives of an older childless couple, Abram and Sarai, with words of strong determination. I will make you a great nation and I will bless you. And that's in Genesis 12:2. This gracious promise was unconditional. God would multiply Abram's descendants and give them the land of Canaan. We studied that last time we met. That's in Genesis 13, 14 through 17. He formalized his promise to Abram as a formal agreement between a superior king and an inferior servant in chapter 15, verses 1 through 21. And finally, we won't get to this today, but probably will the next time. He swore by himself that he would do it in Genesis chapter 22, verses 15 through 18. And his word was irrevocable. It could not be taken back. Whatever God promises, he always follows through. That's one thing that we need to understand. Uh, Man, no matter how well intentioned or how good a man or woman may be, man will always fall short at some point on their promises, but God will never fall short on his promises. Yet within his unconditional promises, God did make demands. He commanded Abram and Sarai to leave their home and their extended family to go to a new land in chapter 12, verse 1. We studied that. He commanded them to be a blessing to others, to walk before him and be blameless. We're going to talk about that tonight, and to circumcise the males in their household as a sign of the covenant in Genesis chapter 17, verse 10. Although God's promises were unconditional, Abram's temporal participation in God's blessings was conditioned by his faithfulness and his obedience to God's commands. Abram understood the test. He believed and obeyed. So we have, and we're going to talk about that also some tonight. Uh, God gave his assurances. We left off from chapter 15 last time. God gave assurances to Abram, and I'm just sort of summarizing something that's on the outline from last time. God reassured Abram about his future and his numerous descendants. He gave him a vision. Abram had a vision, and he shared his doubts. And his number one doubt was what? In that vision, just by way of review. Anybody? Anybody? Okay. Uh, his doubt was that he had no heir, and because of that, he said, I'm childless and I'm old, basically. And God reaffirms that promise to him in Genesis chapter 15, verse 5. Hello? Yes? I thought I heard somebody. Hello, Joyce and John. Y'all have a seat. Everything should be ready. The computer and key mouse is in front of y'all.
Yep.
Uh, we're talking now about the Abrahamic covenant, and I'm just going over Genesis chapter 15. So we're continuing in that. Abraham believed, and we talked about what it meant to believe or to trust in God. And the Bible says, both in this section and also in the New Testament, in the book of Hebrews, that Abram believed God and it was counted to him as righteousness. Belief is the vehicle through which we can please God by the only thing we can do is to be obedient to God's promises to us and be obedient to the offering that Jesus made on the cross for us. And by believing that, and we actually can appropriate the sacrifice that he made. Abraham believed God. The children of God are not through all of the sacrifices that we're going to talk about. They're merely symbols. They're things that God wanted us to understand in the Old Testament because they point to the need of a sacrifice. But God wanted us, and he explains this in the book of Romans also. God wants all of us to know that those that please God have always come to him in faith. And faith means acting on what God said, not on what we see. Faith is always based on believing what we cannot see, not what we can see. If we can see it, it's not faith. So to believe that Jesus is the Christ and to believe that Jesus is God in the flesh and that he died for our sins is something that we can only appropriate by faith. Uh, and I wanted to stress that because God stressed that here in the covenant with Abraham. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a little bit because I want to share with you today the let's see here if I can find it, the outline for today. Sorry, excuse me. This is our outline for today, and this is what we're going to be going over today. I just wanted you to know that the covenant that God made with Abraham was re-emphasized several times in the book of Genesis. In other words, God reaffirmed it to him in different ways. We're going to find that he also does that again in the passage that we're going to study tonight to Abraham and also to Sarah, his wife. Genesis chapter 16, verses 1 through 3. Would someone like to read that?
You
Can
want
y'all hear
someone to
me?
read that?
Yes. If somebody will read Genesis chapter 16, verses 1 through 3.
Okay,
Now
John.
Sarai, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children. She had an Egyptian maid whose name was Hagar. And Sarah said to Abraham, "See here, the Lord has restrained me from bearing children. I am asking you to have intercourse with my maid, that it may be that I can obtain children by her." And Abraham listened to and heeded what Sarai said.
Okay. So we find here that first of all, that Hagar was an Egyptian handmaid. Where did she come from, you think?
Egypt.
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 Oh, okay. Okay, she came from Egypt. When did she come from Egypt? We talked about a time when she probably joined up with them. I mean, it doesn't say she did specifically, but it makes sense that she probably joined them. Remember when Abraham and Sarah went, Sarai, her name is still, when she went to Egypt, and Abraham told Pharaoh that she was his wife, and Pharaoh started having problems, and God revealed to him that he was going to judge him if he didn't send her back, and he sent him away with riches. And she was probably one of the handmaidens, the Egyptian handmaidens that was given to Abraham.
Yeah.
as a slave during that time.
Yeah,
Yes,
I would say.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I was saying, yes, I agree.
Oh, okay. Uh, so that it makes sense that she did. So we find that that God has promised Abraham that he's going to make, that he's going to make of him a great nation. But we find that when God tells him that, he had no children. At this time, we're going to find out that Abraham is close to 90 years old. I think he's about 87 at this time. Uh, and Sarah is also getting on up there in age. And so it was Sarah's idea. She said, "Hey, we're too old to have kids. Uh, See, now the Lord has restrained me from bearing children. In other words, God's closed my womb so we can't have kids." But what was God's promise?
That he would make Abraham into a great nation.
Okay. Uh, and God had promised him that. And if God promised him that, what's the problem with what Abraham and Sarah by default is doing now in regard to that promise?
Trying to fulfill it on their own.
Right. If we're not careful, even today, when God gives us a word and when God reveals something to us, if we're not careful, we will try to rationalize that with our logic, and we'll start making assumptions based on logically what normally progresses in a world apart from God, or in a world that God does not intervene in, what happens naturally. But God is able to supersede what happens naturally. And we're going to find what happens when we don't trust God in a pretty dramatic way. So Abraham, he took uh, Hagar, we're going to find, her maid, and she actually had sex with him. She gave him the Bible, some translations say she was given to him as a wife, and then she had sexual relations with him, and she became pregnant. And we're going to find after she became pregnant, uh, that something there was a rift between her and Sarah. And what happened? Somebody read, if you will, uh chapter 4 through 6. I mean, excuse me, chapter 16, verses 4 through 6.
Ah, I can do it, Rodney.
Okay, Genesis chapter
Sorry.
16, verse 4 through 6.
Okay, so Abram had sexual relations with Hagar, and she became pregnant. But when Hagar knew she was pregnant, she began to treat her mistress Sarai with contempt. Then Sarai said to Abram, "This is all your fault. I put my servant into your arms, but now that she's pregnant, she treats me with contempt. The Lord will show who's wrong, you or me."
Okay.
Abram replied, "Look, she is your servant, so deal with her as you see fit." Then Sarai treated Hagar so harshly that she finally ran away.
Okay. Uh, so we find here that when they took matters into their own hands, that first of all, Hagar, because she had gotten pregnant and Sarah could not, according to the normal circumstances or the way that things would progress naturally, she was not able to get pregnant. And when Hagar was, she despised Sarah and like looked down on her in a sense, because during that time to be barren was looked upon in an even more negative ways than it has been in the past. I know in our nation's history that's been looked upon many years in the past as being, to be barren was considered to be, and it is still in some religions, of the world today considered to be a punishment by God, even though it is not. So Hagar actually looked down on Sarah. Well, Sarah returned the favor, and she went to Abraham, and she's got Abraham's ear. She's Abraham's wife. She's the one he loves. Uh, and she said, "Look, you know, she's not acting well." And Abraham said, "Well, you do with her whatever you will." And so that led to conflict, which also led to Hagar fleeing from Sarai. I keep calling her Sarah. She's about to become Sarah, but she's not Sarah yet. And so she left, and God told her to come back. And let's see what he told her. Someone read, if you will, Genesis chapter 16, verses 7 through 9.
Okay, hold on. The angel of the Lord said to her, "Go back to your mistress and humbly submit to her." Control. Was that all? Oh, that was 9.
Through verse 9. Is that through verse 9?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't start with 7. Let me go back. But the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness on the road to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, Sarai's maid, where did you come from? And where are you intending to go?" And she said, "I am running away from my mistress Sarai." Then the angel of the Lord said to her, "Go back to your mistress and humbly submit to her control."
Okay. So we find that Hagar was simply initially the victim of circumstance. She was the one who Sarah initiated this whole situation. But Abraham also took part, and Hagar, she's pretty desperate, and she doesn't know what to do. When you have time, and I know we don't have time tonight, one thing I'd like for you, if you haven't already, and some of you I'm sure have, it would be good to listen to Kathy Lee Gifford and I forget the lady's name. I'll give y'all her name though. She sings a song. They wrote a song about it's called "The God Who Sees" is the name of the song. Nicole something is her name. It's a beautiful song. It's about God seeing the plight of his people. And by default, because Hagar was considered part of the covenant family of God because she was one of the servants, and also because her son was born to Abraham, we're going to find that God deals graciously with her, and he makes a commitment and a covenant to provide for her and her offspring as well. Keep in mind, and this is one thing that I have to tell myself sometimes, and this is one of the main lessons to learn from this section of Genesis. It's never our ideas to do good that God blesses. It's always what his ideas and ways that he wants us to submit to that he blesses. I've heard often that people say, well, God will give me anything I ask for. Well, that's not true. In the context that we quote that in sometimes, as a scripture verse in the New Testament that we often quote as God will give me anything I ask for in prayer, says if we ask according to his will. That's the follow up to that. And one thing I think that we need to remind ourselves of often is God's ways are not usually our ideas of the way things need to be. Oftentimes, God chooses a path that's different than the one we would choose, partly because if we are operating on our idea of what we should do, we're probably not having faith to believe that God can follow through with what he wants us to do. So that's illustrated here because Ishmael, who is going to be the baby born of this union between Hagar and Abraham, was Abraham and Sarah's idea. And God was not going to bless and make that promise through Ishmael. He's going to make it through someone else. So I think that we need to probably look at that as the background as we read further. If someone else wants to, the promise of a son and chapter 16, verses 10 through 12.
Okay.
Let's read that. Somebody read that, if you will.
Your wife's going to read it. Do you hear me?
I'm sorry?
Do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but you kind of low a little bit.
Okay. Then the angel of the Lord said to her, I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said to her, behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. He shall be a wild man. His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hands against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees. For she said, have I also here seen him who sees me? Therefore, the well was called Beer Lahal Roi. Observe, it is between Kadesh and Beret. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram named his son, whom Hagar bore Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram.
I had said that Abraham was 87, but it says here he was 86. I was counting back from Isaac when Isaac was conceived. But he was 86 years old. And we find that Hagar receives the providence and promise of God. I mean, she's in a bad way here because she's actually basically put out with Ishmael. And when we take matters into our own hands, this is a lesson for us, I believe, under the new covenant. When we take matters into our own hands, it usually creates a great deal of pain for us. When we don't follow God and we follow a different path, even if we think it's a good path, and oftentimes we follow paths that are not good, but if we follow a path that we think is a good path, but it's not God's path for us, it creates pain. Imagine the pain Abraham felt because he makes the statement when God makes the covenant with him. We're going to read that in just a minute, but he makes the statement, oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. He really wanted Ishmael to be included in this promise, and he wanted him to be a part of his life. But the fact remains that because he was not God's chosen, and he was not the one through whom Abraham and his family would be blessed, because we can conjecture because of conflict or because of of disobedience or whatever the reason might be, Abraham was separated from his son, and his son and Hagar left and lived and moved somewhere else. So there's a lot of pain, I'm sure, in Abraham's life because he and Sarah jumped the gun and they didn't trust God as they should with the promise and rationalized to themselves that they need to take matters into their own hands. So now there's some pain that results from that. I won't belabor this point any further other than just to say that our sin and our choices apart from God's choices for us always creates pain in our lives and in the lives of others. That's a spiritual principle, I believe, that we'll see throughout the Old Testament, but it's something that really applies to us in the under the new covenant. Okay, in chapter, uh, let's see here. In chapter 17, we're going to find that God renews his covenant with Abraham. Will someone read chapter 17, verses 1 through 8?
17, 1 through 8.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, yes. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am El Shaddai, God Almighty. Serve me faithfully and live a blameless life. I will make a covenant with you by which I will guarantee to give you countless descendants. At this, Abram fell face down on the ground. Then God said to him, This is my covenant with you. I will make you the father of a multitude of nations. What's more, I'm changing your name. It will no longer be Abram. Instead, you will be called Abraham, for you will be the father of many nations. I will make you extremely fruitful. Your descendants will become many nations, and the kings will be among them. I will confirm my covenant with you and your descendants after you from generation to generation. This is the everlasting covenant. I will always be your God and the God of your descendants after you. And I will give you the entire land of Canaan, where you now live as a foreigner, to you and to your descendants. It will be their possession forever, and I will be their God.
Wow.
That's through 7. Is
Okay.
that what you said?
Through 8.
Okay. I'm sorry, that was 8. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
that was 8. Uh, thank you, Jill. The wow, there's a lot in there.
Yeah.
God renews his covenant again. We read initially tonight about God's covenant, the Abrahamic covenant that God went over with Abraham in Genesis chapter 13. Uh, he formalizes it again and gives greater detail. He says to Abraham, Abraham's living as a nomad. Remember, they're living in tents still, traveling from place to place. Remember, he gave Lot. He told Lot, "We're too numerous. You go one way, and I'll go the other." And Lot went to the fertile valley, which is I'm going to talk about that in a little bit also. And Abraham settled in the other land. But God told him, He said, "I'm going to give you all of this land. It's going to be yours. You're dwelling as a stranger in it now, but you will possess this land one day." Let me ask y'all something. What application do you think, because we are the children of Abraham in the new covenant, what application do you think that that promise that was made to Abraham, what spiritual application does that have to us as the children of Abraham in the New Testament? I know that's kind of a
If God
broad
says he's going to
question.
do it, he'll do it.
Do what? Do what, John?
If God says he's going to do it, he'll do it.
Okay, God says he's going to do
But
it.
he's
He'll
probably
do
going
it.
to do it at his time, not yours.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
What's the question again? Can you rephrase?
It's a broad question, and I just brought it up for discussion for a minute. The question is, what application does God's promises to Abraham? God said to him, I'm going to make you a great nation. Kings are going to come out of you, out of your descendants. You're going to possess, and you're going to, you're going to control the land. And not only are you going to control it, but you're going to possess all of this land that you're a stranger in now. What does that say? What does that say to us as the children of Abraham under the new covenant that Jesus established on the cross?
Well, it makes me think that our generations are also under promise. Make me think about our
Okay.
children, right?
We're under promise and we will possess the land. The enemy controls the territory that we now reside in. God tells us that in the New Testament. Just as the children of Israel are told by the covenant of Abraham, and it plays out after they come back out of Egypt, they begin to take possession of the land of promise. That the new covenant says we are going to take the territory that the enemy has taken from God's children back. That is the goal of us living the Christian life on this earth. And one day when Jesus comes back again, the possession of the land will belong to the children of God in its completeness. The spiritual covenant, in other words, will come to fruition just as God's promise to Israel and God's promise to Abraham came true, and will always come true to the people of Israel. Are y'all following me? Y'all kind of
Yes.
look like I fell off a turnip truck or something, but it's very true. These promises they have they have relevance to Abraham and to his descendants through the Jewish nation, but they also there's an application that is reemphasized in the New Testament about those of us who are children of Abraham by faith. In fact, it says that the Jewish nation has always also is also called to respond to God by faith, just as the spiritual descendants of Abraham are in the new. So we find that God renews that covenant. He changes his name from Abram to Abraham. He promises that he will become a nation of many, he will become many nations and kings, and he will also possess the land. Chapter 17, verses 9 through 14. Will somebody read that?
Okay. 9 through 14.
Yes.
Then God said to Abraham, as for you, you must keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you for the generations to come. This is my covenant with you and your descendants after you, the covenant you are to keep. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You are to undergo circumcision, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and you. For the generations to come, every male among you who is 8 days old must be circumcised, including those born in your household or brought with money from a foreigner. Those who are not your offspring, whether born in your household or bought with your money, they must be circumcised. My covenant in your flesh is to be an everlasting covenant. You
Okay.
said 14?
Yeah, that's important.
Okay. Any uncircumcised male who has not been circumcised in the flesh will be cut off from his people because he has broken my covenant.
Okay.
What?
All right. I'm going to ask a question that every pastor fears that. Does everybody know what circumcision is?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. But yeah, please don't talk about it. I can tell y'all that was a very important covenant responsibility that is taken very seriously even to this day, uh, by the Jewish people, God's people under the Abrahamic covenant. It was considered to be a sign, and in fact it was so serious, and God was so serious about the requirement to be a part of this covenant, that he required that even all the people that were conquered and all the people that became a part of the Jewish nation, whether they were born in it or whether they were assimilated in it in some other way, had to be circumcised. And that meant that the Jewish custom was to circumcise on the 8th day after birth. And we know that today most males are circumcised before the baby leaves the hospital. That's the normal way that circumcision takes place. Circumcision in our culture often takes place for hygiene reasons. Uh, but in their culture, it was a covenant responsibility for them to be circumcised on the eighth day after they were born. But if they were assimilated, even as adults, they had to be circumcised. Abraham was circumcised. We're talking about a 90-year-old man that was circumcised. Uh, when I don't mind telling y'all, it is a big deal, and it sometimes I think as we study the Old Testament, we find interesting things, and I will say to you that later on, uh, this circumcision, Abram was about 90 years old. Because of health reasons, I almost died when I was an infant. In fact, they were not expecting me to live. I was in the hospital for a period of time and had to be moved to another hospital. I wasn't circumcised. I was circumcised when I was 10 years old. And I can tell y'all, even at 10, it was difficult. But a man being circumcised was very difficult. In fact, there was a time when uh, circumcision took place of a conquered army, and while they were healing from that, they were defeated as an army because they were in no condition to fight. So it was not something that was simple. What I'm trying to say is it was not something that would have been pleasant for any of them to undergo, but it was a necessity for them as a covenant responsibility to obey this. In fact, it was so serious that God said if a male was not circumcised, that he was expelled from being under the covenant. So one thing I think we can learn from that is what God tells us, because God told Abraham, hey, I'm going to bless you. But he also gave him commands and gave him instructions about being obedient and being faithful to God's commands. God's serious about what he tells us to do. He's serious about what we're not justified because of what we do, but God is serious about us doing what he tells us to do. Our relationship with Jesus and his sacrifice, actually in the New Testament, and this is true in the Old as well, is vitally important, and our standing is based on that. But God's commands are very important. When God says he wants holiness and obedience, that's not something to be taken lightly, because the Lord, he expects us to fulfill the covenant responsibilities that even we have in the New Testament. Any questions? I'm sorry?
Oh, were you aware that there's a reason why they do it on the eighth day? God provides the vitamin K is increased just naturally in the body on the eighth day.
I did not know that, Joyce.
Yes.
Did everybody hear that?
That's interesting. Mm-hmm.
Vitamin K is increased in the body, and I'm assuming, Joyce, that it's needed for the healing to take place and everything. Is that correct?
Clot, yes.
Okay.
Blood. Uh-huh. That is so wise.
That's an interesting fact.
He provides provision. If they just followed what he said, they'd be taken care of, right?
Right.
Maybe less complicated, I guess. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Michelle, you're going to have to speak louder. I can't hear you.
No, never mind.
Okay. We get closer. Oh, the covenant responsibilities are very serious things. And God, even if you remember in the New Testament, there was a lot of disagreements in the early church about who needed to be circumcised and who didn't. There was, because it was a covenant responsibility. And remember, the new covenant, there's a passage of scripture, and for the life of me right now, I remember the scripture, but some of y'all may know where it is. We can look it up, but it says that the circumcision of the heart is what's important in the new covenant. So in other words, the heart is what needs to be circumcised and made new. The circumcision was like a rite of passage into the covenant for the male children of Jewish people. Okay. And I know I'm zipping along here, y'all. I'd like to camp out a little while on some of this, but I know we have to keep moving. Sarah's name is going to be changed. Genesis chapter 17, verses 15 and 16. Will somebody read that?
And God said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah, princess, her name shall be. And I will bless her and give you a son also by her. Yes, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples shall come from her.
Okay. So we find that Abraham and Sarah have tried their way. Now God's going to let them know what his way is. Who's going to have the son that's going to be the son of promise?
Sarah.
Sarah. Okay. Her name is changed from Sarai to Sarah, and the son of promise, God says it will be named Isaac, and it will come through Sarah. Someone read chapter, and you can go ahead and read it if you want to, John, because it was just a couple of verses. Chapter 17, verses 17 through 22.
I think I'm on 17. Then Abraham fell on his face, excuse me, and laughed and said in his heart, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a son? And he said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. But God said, Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son, indeed, and you shall call his name Isaac, meaning laughter. And I will establish my covenant or solemn pledge with him for an everlasting covenant with his posterity after him.
Okay. So we find that Abraham doesn't believe. Here we have the father of faith now. He doesn't believe what God is telling him. He said, look, are you telling me an old man like me is going to have a kid? Oh, and that's kind of a country paraphrase, but that's kind of what he said. He said, I'm 100 years old now. So how old is Ishmael at this point?
13.
He's 13. He's 13 years old. And you can imagine 13 is the time when oftentimes a man begins to enjoy doing, I mean, he has earlier, I'm sure, but a man begins to enjoy doing things with his son. Like in our day, it would be like fishing and teaching them things and that type of thing, teaching them to hunt and fish and all that stuff. So Abraham, his heartstrings, even though God's making these promises to him, in the middle of all that, again, he said, "Oh Lord, that Ishmael might live before thee." Uh, he still wants God to bless Ishmael, even in the midst of this great promise that God is giving him. Uh, and he laughed about it, uh, but God still told him that, "Hey, I'm going to do it. I'm going to bring it to pass."
Does Isaac really mean laughter?
I'm sorry.
Does Isaac really mean laughter?
Yes.
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 That's my son's name.
Yes.
Okay.
It
Well,
does.
what's interesting is Ishmael, well, at the age of 13, really, I think it's even 12, the Jewish boys are considered a man. They get to do everything in the temple that the men do.
At 13?
At 13.
Oh.
That's an interesting point, Joyce, that
So I don't know if he was a believer. Was he a believer? If he
well,
was
we don't know that he was a believer. We again, all of the keep in mind. I mean, I know they're the temple and all the sacrificial things and all that stuff have yet to be established. Um, I believe that he was a believer in God because God's going to bless him and his mother. His mother I mean, she heard directly from God. So I'm sure that Abraham stressed to him during the time that he was with him and with his mother that, I'm sure he was a believer. Excuse me, but he was not under the covenant promise, that he was not under the blessing of the covenant. Let me put it that way, that it was not his line that would be where the blessing would come. It would be through Isaac, and his destiny and would be somewhere else. He would not continue to live, in the presence of his father. So, what you're saying is true. I believe he was a believer, but and as you said, he was probably considered a man at that point, would be able to be taught man things. But again, God said he had other plans. God had a plan to raise up a son who had yet to be born. Uh, and not only they took matters into their own hands 10 years prior. Imagine they laughed, and we're gonna find she did too. They laughed at God when he told them 10 years later, even after they took matters into their own hands, that they would have a son. But guess what? They had a son, and it was through him that the nation of Israel was born, and was blessed. Someone read, if you will. I, I'm going to skip over this because we can just talk about it a minute for the sake of time. Because the circumcision of Abraham and his household in 1723 through 27, they obeyed that command of God immediately. So all of the males under Abraham were circumcised. And we're going to find in chapter 18, someone read, if you will, 1 through 8. We're going to find that Abraham gets three visitors, three angelic visitors.
Lord appeared to him by the terebinth tree of Mamre as he was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. So he lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, there 3 men were standing by him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the ground and said, My Lord, if I have now found favor in your sight, do not pass on by your servant. Please let a little water be brought and wash your feet and rest yourself under the tree. And I will bring a morsel of bread that you might refresh your hearts. After that, you might pass by, inasmuch as you have come to your servant. They say, Do not do as you have said. So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah and said, Quickly make ready 3 measures of the fine meal, knead it and make cakes. And Abraham ran to the herd, took a tender and good calf, gave it to a young man, and he hastened to prepare it. So he took butter and milk and the calf, which he had prepared, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree as they ate.
Okay. So we find that Abraham has three visitors. Y'all can kind of see behind me. I tried to put a picture of, the three visitors. We don't know what they look like, but they obviously they weren't they were angels, but they were not. I mean, it's believed that they were angels. They were not of the angels. We're told take on different forms. And obviously, these angels took on the form of a man. The reason we know that is because otherwise, some of the people, when they get later on to Sodom and Gomorrah, would have been terrified of them had they looked like they did, like some of the angels did in the New Testament when they appeared before people. Because the first thing they always said was, "Fear not, I bring you something." Uh, and these looked like men, but Abraham recognized that they were they were angelic, and uh they were from the Lord. So he fell down before them, and he offered a sacrificial meal to them and washed their feet. Remember, sacrificial washing somebody's feet was considered to be the most humbling thing a person could do, because they walked around with sandals on. They were barefooted, and there was no, there was very little sanitation and that type of thing. So, whatever they came upon, unless they walked around things, they stepped in, and he washed their feet and prepared a sacrifice and had Sarah to prepare a meal for them. So we find, and they allowed him to do that. So they made preparations for the meal. And we're going to find out in 18 verses 9 through 15 that we're going to read that because it's a very important passage of scripture. Somebody, if you will, read chapter 18 verses 9 through 15.
Where is your wife? Oh, did you want to read it?
No, you go ahead, Joyce.
Where is your wife Sarah? They asked. There in the tent, he said. Then one of them said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Now Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. And Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, after I am worn out, my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure? Then the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son.
Okay.
You said, was that it? That was
Go ahead and read through verse 15.
Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, I did not laugh. But he said, yes, you did.
Oh, yes, you did. Okay, so here I mean, it's kind of humorous. We do the same thing though. It's like,
Yep.
the angels came with a message. Remember, in the New Testament, an angel was sent with another message. Remember, about another covenant, of a new covenant. Uh, and these were heralds. They were heralding something, and they were heralding that Abraham and Sarah would have a son. And what did she do? Abraham laughed. What did she do?
She laughed and then lied.
Okay, she laughed and lied. Okay, the two L's. So she laughed and lied, and then she kind of made a sarcastic remark, that is my old man, I'm an old woman, and me and my old man gonna have a baby? Yeah, right, was kind of what she said. And what was their reply to her? Their initial reply when she said that?
Is anything too hard for the Lord?
Right. And I asked you, and I asked myself, is anything too hard for the Lord? No. Uh, and she laughed. And then when they confronted her about her laughter, uh, the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh? It's an indication that one of these might have been the incarnate Christ. There's some belief that may be the case, because he's called Lord here. But at the very least, they're angelic beings. And the Lord said to her, why did you laugh? And she lied, like you said, and she said, no, I didn't laugh. But she definitely did. Oh, It's like Adam and Eve was in the garden and he said, "What are you hiding at?" It's not because he didn't know they were hiding.
Mm-hmm.
He knew exactly where they were. He wanted them to know that he knew where they were.
Yeah.
So they said, we hid because we were naked. He said, "Well, who told you you were naked?" But anyway, that's sort of the same thing. It's like we need to be honest with God. And I know it's a struggle for all of us, I believe, sometimes, because we have this idea that God is like us, but he's not. He's all knowing. He wants us to know that he knows, and sometimes he wants us to know ourselves when we possibly don't know certain things. He wants us to know the truth so that we can move on into whatever his plan and will is for us. So we find that Abraham is going to intercede for Sodom. Will somebody read chapter 18, verses 16 through 33?
I can read it. Then the men got up from their meal and looked out toward Sodom. As they left, Abraham went with them to send them on their way. Should I hide my plan from Abraham? The Lord asked. For Abraham will certainly become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through him. I have singled him out so that he will direct his sons and their families to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. Then I will do for Abraham all that I have promised. So the Lord told Abraham, I have heard a great outcry from Sodom and Gomorrah because their sin is so flagrant. I am going down to see if their actions are as wicked as I have heard. If not, I want to know. The other men turned and headed toward Sodom, but the Lord remained with Abraham. Abraham approached him and said, will you sweep away both the righteous and the wicked? Suppose you find 50 righteous people living there in the city. Will you still sweep it away and not spare it for their sakes? Surely you wouldn't do such a thing, destroying the righteous along with the wicked. Why, you would be treating the righteous and the wicked exactly the same. Surely you wouldn't do that. Should not the judge of all the earth do what is right? And the Lord replied, if I find 50 righteous people in Sodom, I will spare the entire city for their sake. Then Abraham spoke again, since I have begun, let me speak further to my Lord, even though I am but dust and ashes. Suppose there are only 45 righteous people rather than 50. Will you destroy the whole city for lack of 5? And the Lord said, I will not destroy it if I find 45 righteous people there. Then Abraham pressed his request further. Suppose there are only 40. And the Lord said, I will not destroy it for the sake of the 40. Please don't be angry. My Lord, Abraham pleaded, let me speak. Suppose only 30 righteous people are found. And the Lord replied, I will not destroy it if I find 30. Then Abraham said, since I have dared to speak to the Lord, let me continue. Suppose there are only 20. And the Lord replied, then I will not destroy it for the sake of 20. Finally, Abraham said, Lord, please don't be angry with me if I may speak one more time. Suppose there are only 10 found there. And the Lord replied, then I will not destroy it for the sake of the 10.
Okay. Thank you. Uh,
Wow.
so there's a principle here about intercession. Interceding is something that God honors and God asks us to do as his people. The whole concept of knocking and keeping on knocking and seeking and keep on seeking uh, in the New Testament is affirmed here. Abraham interceded for this city. He knew his brother lived there and he interceded. He started with 50 and ended up said, God, if there's 10, will you spare them? And God said, yes. But obviously, we're going to find later, and we're going to stop right here now. But we're going to find out later that there were not 10 because God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. And we're going to talk about that the next time and what happened there. But intercession is something that, sometimes if I'm not careful, I have to ask myself, Lord, I have to be honest with myself. Lord, do I believe you enough to intercede and to believe that intercession matters? And I think that's a question we have to ask ourselves. And the answer to that is yes, it matters a lot. When we intercede, it's just like sometimes I know that intercession doesn't seem like it matters, but intercession does. When you pray for your kids, when you pray for your grandkids, when you pray for people who are in bondage about certain things, the Lord hears that. The Lord is listening to our intercession, and I do believe that sometimes, as we will find, even in the prophet Jonah with Nineveh, even though he didn't want Nineveh to be saved, because the people repented, uh, and God spared them. And God often spares people because people intercede on their behalf. Uh, and that I think that's a principle that we need to stand on more. Intercession is something that's missing in the church
Yes.
often, to the extent that it needs to be. It's just as vitally important and more vitally important than a lot of the stuff that we give more importance to in regard to people's lives needing to be changed.
Yes.
So intercession is needed. I'll stop here, y'all, because I know it's 7:02. Uh, and I intended to go through chapter 19, but we'll stop here. Uh, but what we'll do is we'll have discussion now. So we're officially ending the Bible study at this time. But if y'all want to stay around for some discussion, we'll do that, and we'll do that now. But we're officially done with the Bible study. I appreciate all of you and your attention. It's so good to be back with y'all again. I'm really enjoying this, and I know the Lord's speaking to me through a lot of it, and I hope He is to you as well. But we'll start the discussion now. So anybody that can't take part in the discussion or needs to exit can do so. But we'll leave it open for discussion and questions. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, Ronnie,
Yes.
remember I have to excuse myself at 7:15.
Oh, okay. You have yeah. Yeah, Michelle has a prayer. She's supposed to meet with some people at 7:15. But I'll be around. I can stay as long as y'all want. And we'll discuss.
I just want to share that. I just want to share. We read about Abraham going and getting a lamb and doing what we call a Mideastern preparations for a meal. We experienced that many times when we lived in Israel. We would be invited to somebody's house, but it would be a full afternoon or evening long.
Wow.
We're talking about 3-4 hours. I said, what are we eating? And my friend that I was with, she said, well, don't make it real obvious.
What?
Off the back of the fence, so it was a goat of some sort.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so they really do all of what.
Yeah, they're and that's interesting because y'all.
Fresh.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Invited to something like that.
No refrigerator.
Everything is like fresh.
Yep.
Baked, made right there. I
Wow.
wanted to say that I love these the thing that we read the last of Abraham interceding like that. I thought it was so sweet that the Lord kept saying yes, yes, and yes. And I believe if he would have said, what if there were 5? The Lord would say yes. He kept saying yes to him.
But here's what it is how sad, because Lot's family, he had 2 daughters and they each had boyfriends. If their boyfriends and their parents, you would include all of those people with Lot, it would be 10. There weren't even 10 because Lot's wife wasn't turned back, and the boyfriends went
Disappeared.
away,
They
and
left.
disappeared. So they had nothing, you know, their family weren't believers. So it was Lot and his 2 daughters. That's why.
That was it.
Yep.
That was it. Only 3 out of the whole city. That's pretty
Yep.
bad.
That's a good point. It's not even his family.
So that he kept saying yes to him. I think it's so meaningful, you know, when you have favor with the Lord and you intercede. Yes, 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 and yes, I love it.
But he was willing to keep on asking.
And he
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
yes,
He was a great
willing to
negotiator.
press in.
Yeah.
Press in. Yes, I love it.
Yes.
Rodney, can I say one thing before I go to bed?
Do what, Bill? I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
Can I say one thing before I go to bed?
Oh, you can say whatever you want, Bill.
I'm probably going to get me in trouble, but I'm going to say it.
Okay.
Was like 3 key things tonight. First of all, God said it's going to happen. Second of all, be patient and wait upon him. And third, don't always do what your wife asks you to do.
Oh, you are. You better go to
Sitting
bed,
right
Bill.
here. I'm sitting right here.
Good night, Rodney.
Hey, we need to meet, Bill.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you do.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh,
I actually
hey,
thought about that, but then I said, no, I'm gonna leave that there a little bit. So
Rodney, tell me what Pastor Alex told you the first time you met with him.
he told me that I was blessed and I should be commended for living and putting up with you. But no, I'm just kidding. That's not what he said. He told me to listen to Michelle. So,
Do everything she tells you to do.
well,
That's what he said to him.
I don't think he had a clear map. But anyway,
wow.
yeah.
This
But
is a true story. This is not a lie.
I believe you. I believe you. Totally. Michelle.
oh, that coming on the back end of what Bill said. That's no. All jokes aside, it's one thing that I always heard about this passage of scripture that is so
White chocolate.
Wonderful.
I put them over there in that little heart. You could get
one thing I always heard about this passage of scripture was the importance of not taking God's will into our own hands and not overstepping God's will for us as far as listening to him. And so oftentimes we say, oh Lord, you need some help, or you must be wanting me to help out here and do something. And God says, no, I have my ways. And we're told that over and over again, but I think sometimes it's difficult. And here we have the man who's considered the father of the faithful.
Yeah.
A pillar of faith, and they're struggling with the will of God. But we're going to see a change in Abraham because, man, this is a great principle.
Yeah.
I don't want to give it away, but I'll just say God's going to ask him to give away and sacrifice the very thing he told him he's going to bless him through.
I'm just bringing him up to